The Exo. Howdy. Jesus brought two fishes because he was representing the age of Pisces. I have been showing this picture earlier, but today I somehow noticed or realized the funny thing in this picture. Maybe the guy who made this, or whoever, Sappy Days, knew this, that's why he made it. But anyway, the age of Pisces is about to end, or it's already like over. We are going into the age of Aquarius, the water bearer. The water bearer. I thought that's funny. But anyway, let's go to something interesting. Fist.org. Is it too late to change your mind? Study reveals developmental window for thinking styles. The speaker addresses a crowd in Timișoara, Romania during the 1989 revolution that ousted Nicolae Ceausescu. Researchers studied how Romanian epistemic thinking styles were affected the transition from authoritarian rule to democracy. While people change and learn throughout life, experts recognize that certain formative periods, known as developmental windows, are crucial for acquiring particular skills. For example, using vocalizations and words to interact with people in the first few years of life is critical for children's language learning. And this is the second try I make this video, and there was this commercial, and I don't really know what's going on here, but it seems, maybe, here it says, Grandma knows. Is there some service that you can call old people who still know? Like, for example, how to make food? Because if you nowadays go into a supermarket, about half of all stuff you can buy there is already made for you. You don't have to know how to make food. You know? But anyway, a recent study by an international team from UCLA, Romania, and Israel suggests there may be a developmental window for reasoning skills as well, the first 25 years of life, and that a person's social, political, and economic environment strongly influences how they acquire these skills. Their findings are published in the journal PLOS ONE. The researchers found that following the collapse of Romania's authoritarian communist regime in 1989, the rapid increase in education and technology use and the transition from a single government-controlled source of information to diverse sources had a strong effect on the way people, particularly younger generations, thought about and determined truthfulness, a process known as epistemic thinking. Epistemic thinking runs the gamut from absolutist thinking, the belief that only one claim can be right, to multiplist thinking, the belief that more than one claim could be right. It's just a matter of opinion. Finally, evolutivist. Yeah, I butchered this in my previous attempt many times, that's why I started again. But anyway, evolutive thinking posits that assertions can be evaluated in terms of both logic and evidence. Yes, it must be logic and there must be evidence. So claiming that there is a black hole you can't see there's no logic and no evidence. Or whatever Schrödinger's cats, you know. It doesn't make sense. If it doesn't make sense, it's wrong. It must be wrong. If if something lacks logic or evidence, or even both, there's no worth in the whole knowledge. Whether we are monitoring various news sources or scrolling through a busy Twitter feed, we are constantly encountering diverse viewpoints about topics ranging from politics to films. Yeah, probably not. I got other stuff in my news feed. Anyway, said the study's first author, Amalio Ionescu. So probably in her newsfeed, she's reading about films. I don't know. A doctoral student in psychology at UCLA. Some of these topics carry infinitely more weight than others, but ultimately, we are using the same sort of mechanism when deciding how to make sense of contrasting viewpoints. In the US, developmental psychology research has shown that children typically think in absolutist terms, then progress to multiplist thinking, and sometimes, particularly with a relatively high level of education and exposure to various experiences and points of view, emerge as evolutivist adults. Yeah, you have to acquire some knowledge. That's why you go to school. Let's take the example of Finland. It, Finland got now the sixth time in a row, like, it got the happiest country in the world. And some time ago, turned out that the average educational level has been going downhill for the last 20 years. So obviously it's functioning because now people are happy. You have no idea how hard it is here to find someone who speaks English. So if a person is only able to speak and read one language, there is no way they could stumble across things from outside of the language bubble, so to say. As I have been telling you many times, if you are searching for something on Wikipedia, like let's take a random example, some geological features somewhere in a country. Try to find knowledge in the country's language, not in your language. In the country, if there's a geological feature in a certain country, try to figure out how they call the place and all this stuff, and try to Google knowledge about these features in the country's language, and then make some translation machine translate it for you. Because not only you will probably find much more information, but the information might be also slightly different because it has been translated. Anyway. And it's also like black holes, Schrödinger's cats, and many like these kind of scientific paradigms. These are just doctrines, and people who study them, they're just repeating the same mantras as they got taught, and they have to prove that they know them. Otherwise, they couldn't make any scientific educational. What is it? Now I just don't know the word. Career. Yeah, it's not possible to make a scientific career if you don't agree with their paradigm. And if you step out the paradigm, you are gone. Because you made one mistake. You probably thought for yourself, so to say, out of the box. If someone tells me or would tell me thinking out of the box, I would ask that what box you are talking about. In order to be able to think out of the box, you have to believe in the box. But anyway, let's continue somewhere where we have been. The study authors hypothesize that in a society ruled by an authoritarian government with strict control over information, limited education, and little exposure to the outside world, absolutist thinking would be more prevalent. Conversely, in an open democratic society, there would likely be a higher occurrence of evolutivist thinking. Now, there are several words in this article I cannot really pronounce, so just imagine I would say them correctly. Or just take it. To test this, they focused on Romania, which in the late 1940s became communist and aligned itself with the Soviet Union. Beginning in 1965, under the authoritarian leadership of Nicolae Ceausescu, Romania became an increasingly repressive and isolated. After Ceausescu was overthrown in 1989, the country quickly moved toward democracy, embraced a market economy, and joined the European Union. Yeah, I saw the pictures after they shot the Ceausescu pair, like the wife of him. It was probably one of the first time I saw dead people in TV. You know, in the news. Nowadays, they don't do this stuff anymore. But anyway, today, Romanians have a developing education system and open access to technology, social media, consumer goods, and travel. How, the researchers asked, may this transition have affected Romanians' epistemic thinking, focusing on three age cohorts: these born after the Democratic Revolution, 18 to 30 years old, those who spent their late adolescence and early adulthood in the authoritarian regime, 45 to 59, and those who spent at least 45 years under the authoritarian regime, 75 and older. The authors presented the respondents with scenarios in which two characters had contrasting views. Then they asked the respondents, which character is right? Or are both of them right? Why? They found that there was a greater occurrence of absolutist thinking among those who had experienced the transition to democracy in middle age rather than at earlier period of life. The vast majority of those 75 or older tended to read or listen to the news and instantly take it as truth. Possibly because for most of their lives they had only one TV program to watch and all books, news, movies, and music were under communist censorship. It's probably very rude to say, but you can communist censorship, you can also take it as or you could think of the whole thing in a different way about the language bubble. You know, if you only speak one language, it is all the knowledge you get is basically censorship because you cannot verify it from another source in another language. You cannot get a different viewpoint onto something. You know. But anyway, said co-author Raluca Furdiui, a master student at Romania's West University in Timișoara. They learn to respect the authority of the teachers in schools, and some never even had the chance to go to high school. And that's also a fundamental problem in educational system. Maybe that's why we have something like this in the first place, but they don't teach you to think. They just tell you what you have to know, and you have to prove that you know it because they are testing this all those years when you're in school. Yeah, you have to think some mathematical stuff there, but they don't teach you how to think. Maybe this is what they are trying to avoid. Dumping so much knowledge on you, which probably doesn't even matter really. And then you are really busy with just learning some stuff and repeating it. In contrast, Furdui said, we, the youngest generation in our study, currently between 18 and 30, were challenged by our teachers to express our opinions, think critically, and check information. Yeah, obviously, she speaks another language. I think, because if she or he, Furdui person, seems to have grown up in Romania and now is in the US, so he or she speaks at least 2 languages. The researchers found that evolutivism, oh man, I hate these kind of things, not being able to pronounce for whatever reason. I could read it, but it doesn't work. Evolutivism was most common among this youngest generation, which also had the highest education levels. Lower levels of both formal education and social media use predicted higher levels of absolutist thinking and lower levels of evolutivism. Evolutivism. Sorry. The study authors concluded that the developmental window for epistemic thinking is open during the first 5 years of life, after which it slowly closes and the person's epistemic thinking style will change little later in their adulthood. Yeah, I have too many things on my mind. It's really hard to concentrate on reading. We found that the social environment produced by a combination of democracy and a market economy. Competition, in other words, everyone has to win. You know? So there's just one winner and all the others are the losers. Market economy. And this reflects on all levels of society. Everything is a competition. You know? No good. No good. More frequently led people to abandon the assumption that there is one right answer and to evaluate multiple possibilities. Yeah. They are pressured into that because somewhere you have to win, otherwise you're going to be a loser, you know? I take whatever. A drowning person is grabbing to whatever comes by. When one was born into this environment or when it was experienced in the first 25 years of life, rather than in the middle age or beyond, said co-author Patricia Greenfield of UCLA, distinguished professor of psychology. We found that there is indeed a sensitive development period for acquiring cultural ways of thinking. The open information pendulum can swing the opposite way too. The authors also said they believe their findings can help explain why unfettered access to information, social media, and a plethora of personal opinions can sometimes lead into the opposite direction, toward absolutist thinking and authoritarian politics. Yeah. These are really difficult words for me. But anyway, along with the rise of the internet and social media, there has been in the United States a rise of the importance of personal opinion, along with a decline in the importance of agreed upon facts. And while the trend towards increasing source of information and opinions in Romania has been associated with the democratization and opening up of society, in the US, the indiscriminate application of the principle that everyone has a right to their own opinion has led to information silos and absolutist thinking. In Romania, the transition from authoritarianism to democracy has related to a decline of absolute thinking and a rise in evaluation as a form of thought, said co-author Michael Weinstock, an associate professor of education at Israel's Ben Gurion University of the Negev. But based on our research, one would predict that the opposite change in the environment towards more authoritarianism would lead to the opposite direction of change towards more absolutist thinking. Changes in the authoritarian direction happened in the USA under the Trump administration. The study authors said, and have recently been happening in other countries around the world. France, Finland is very close to join the group. But this is just what I think. Read the article, here's the paper, I guess. Click on this link and you will find the whole paper. And yeah. Think for yourself. Take this information, compare it to as many possible other things, and hopefully you come to a logical conclusion. Because if your conclusion is not logic, it's probably wrong. Take a step back, take a look at the bigger picture, try to grab as much as a holistic picture of the whole, which also includes history. And with history, I also mean mythology. Nature's basic nature of cycles, how history repeats itself. Why the question mark is such a scary thing. Why the question mark is probably the most scariest of all signs you use when you write something. Do you know the power of a question? Only the curious people know the answer to that. Thanks. Bye.